I don't want to think about it, but it just won't go away. It keeps rolling around in my head, gets me so afraid I think I've fallen backwards in time. I can't think about it. It was mid-April, 1983. The day still cool, but gaining warmth steadily. It was nice out, the spring sun occasionally peeping out from behind lazy clouds. The city lay sprawled out before the building, sparkling in the afternoon light. Some windows were open, letting in a steady breeze, but most were closed so as not to disrupt the documents spread out on the long conference table. People milled around the room waiting for the last stragglers to show up. I was running late again. I still hadn't memorized the layout of the building completely. Papers were spilling out of my hands, falling out of the manila folders. I rushed down the halls, sharply turning corners. I couldn't be late again. I passed down a hall with large floor-to-ceiling windows along one wall. I glanced down despite my time crunch and spotted a van pulling through the gates of the embassy. I merely shrugged off the weird feeling that crept over me and continued to race to the meeting. More of my papers fell out of my hands just as I reached the conference door. I growled as I bent over to pick up the sensitive documents, cursing the placement of the conference room right in the middle of the embassy. As I stood, the doors blew off their hinges and I was thrown backwards against the wall. There was a loud ringing, filling my ears. I lay slumped against the broken slabs of building materials, startled, breathing heavily. My eyes wide, I slowly looked around. Destruction surrounded me. I felt a rumble coursing through the building and I started to slide. Frantically I stood, almost fell, and then regained my balance. I stared at the conference room, or at least what was left of it. My mouth slightly open, I edged closer to the broken doorway and looked down at the parking lot, at least 4 stories below me. A landslide of rubble was heaped below, as if every balcony on the way down had collapsed. The building shook again as I backed away, heart pounding. My ears still ringing, completely disoriented and scared, I knew I had to reach safety. If the whole central facade of the building had collapsed, then the central staircase would not be an option. I carefully picked my way through the wreckage, still in shock. What had happened? As I walked farther away from the central facade, the destruction lessened. My hearing slowly began to come back, and I picked out the sound of sirens in the distance. I hurried on to the stairway on the right side of the building. Hopefully it was still intact. The doors were off their hinges and there was some debris scattered on the stairs, but I could find my way down. The emergency lighting had kicked on, sending a dull, ghostly yellow light cascading down the stairs. I cautiously took the first step, but began to hurry when the building groaned again. I was panting, out of breath by the time I reached the single door at the bottom of the stairs. A sliver of light seeped through the crack between the door and wall. I pushed on the door, but it wouldn't move. My heart beat faster as the building moaned. I pushed harder, but it wasn't opening. I pounded on the door, the dull thumps of my hands hitting metal echoed up the staircase. I started yelling at the top of my lungs. Maybe someone was out there. Maybe they would be able to hear me. No use. I am going to die. I will die not knowing what happened, late to a meeting, slumped against a door so close to survival. As I calmed down, a dull aching pain pulsed in my right arm. The pain grew. Had I been hurt? I hadn't noticed, hadn't thought to check. The pain was so bad I didn't register that the door was opening, until light poured into the small alcove at the base of the stairs. Dust drifted lazily outside. I blinked hard, staring up at a figure. I remember grabbing a gloved hand and being pulled to my feet. I remember stumbling outside to an ambulance. I remember the paramedics having to set my broken arm, saying it was a minor injury despite what I had gone through. But the one thing I do not wish to remember is burned vividly into my mind, being told the U.S. Embassy had been bombed by the Islamic Jihad. They did not want Americans in Beirut. They wanted us out of Lebanon completely. They had killed 63 people, I was told. The rescue workers were looking for the bodies, 17 of them Americans. I am appalled thinking back to that day. Some say that I am lucky to have survived. I question if I am really that lucky, having to live in a world drenched in the fear of terrorism, a world where people purposely turn a blind eye to evils. Am I really that lucky to live in a world where the evils are becoming brave enough and strong enough to creep out of the shadows, where it can kill 63 people without batting an eyelash? I do not believe that is luck.